governance briefing. And a warm welcome also to the colleagues who are joining us online. My name is Stephanie Borg-Saila. I'm the director for digital policy at DiploFoundation and the editor for the GIP Digital Watch Observatory. And together today with me we have Professor Jovan Kurbalija, the head of DiploFoundation, and
You're not feeling well?
No.
Sure.
Can you excuse me?
Sure, no problem. Good.
Can you take over?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Hello. There is. Don't worry. There is nothing serious. We want to bring some drama in our briefings because they usually we just narrate the facts, and now we have a drama with Steph leaving temporarily the briefing. But don't worry. It's nothing serious. It's great to. The spring brings everything, and including stomach problems, and then we'll deal with that. It's really great to have you today here, as Steph said. And what we are going to do is to basically use our usual way of summarizing the major developments in April during the previous month, and identifying the key trends and indicating what is ahead of us. Then I will be basically starting with the slides, and that's the way. And then we'll have time for discussion, your questions, comments, inputs, and comments and questions from our colleagues online. What has happened here are the major developments. The month started with the Russian Internet Governance Forum in St. Petersburg. Then there was the working group on lethal autonomous weapons meeting, the first meeting in 2018. ITO expert group meeting. I may just have the other mic, rolling mic. Yeah, that's fine. And then we had also UNCTAD e-commerce week. UNCTAD e-commerce week and Geographical Information System for Sustainable Development, World Geneva ITO Council, second European Multidisciplinary Conference on Global Internet Governance Sectors, Regulators, Transaction Strategies, and Physics Meets Blockchain first discussion workshop in Geneva. Well, those were the main developments during the previous month, and now we will go through the barometer. We'll need the next slide. What's happened in April on the question of global IG infrastructure? As you can see, there was a raise in the pressure with a few developments. One is a tech accord. Tech accord was issued on the 17th of April by 34 internet companies, including Microsoft, who initiated tech accord, and Facebook, among other companies, quite a few European digital companies. And we'll analyze very interesting dynamics between initial draft and the current draft of tech accord later on. The Commonwealth met for its summit in London, and the Commonwealth is a very interesting organization because this is sort of a world on the smaller scale. You have all diversities from small to big countries, from developed to developing countries, from more or less all continents, I guess, except Latin America. And the Commonwealth issued the final cybersecurity declaration, which is a very interesting document because it has a strong focus on security. Most parts are related to security, relatively lower focus on the digital economy, and surprisingly low emphasis on the question of human rights, because Commonwealth is typically focusing heavily on human rights. You know that they introduced the sanctions against countries which basically breach the human rights and the democracy rules. In this document, which we'll share later on with you, there are a few interesting ideas like peer review on cybersecurity, voluntary peer review. Therefore, we may have at first elements of potential future peer review like we have in the human rights field and with the UDPR, Universal. You help me with the acronyms. Periodical review. I'm losing myself with acronyms, and there are so many of them. Therefore, this is development. What we got on the sort of Sustainable development, it hasn't been so much in the focus. There was one event with Denmark joining the World Bank's Digital Development Partnership. On security, we have a continuous build-up in the developments, and the European Commission proposing new rules to facilitate cross-border access of law enforcement agencies to electronic evidence. This is the field which is growing in the relevance, access to the electronic evidence. You have the Cloud Computing Act in the US Congress. There are the activities in European Union, how to enable fast access to the electronic evidence. The US Department of Homeland Security, Federal Bureau, and the UK National Cybersecurity Center released the technical alert warning against Russian state-sponsored cyber attacks targeting network infrastructure devices. And Australian authorities also joined the US and UK in this warning. As you know, in this field there are many allegations, and there were quite only a few official statements and documents with some facts and elements. And this is one of the rare documents where it moved from the allegations to the official document stating the facts. This is the reason why it is important. Next, please. And we have e-commerce, and we'll focus on e-commerce later on. The month of April was extremely busy with the e-commerce developments, and we'll go into more details about all of these developments. On the question on digital rights, there was a court in Moscow approving request from country's regulator Roskomnadzor to block access to Telegram services. You know that Telegram as a company is becoming quite controversial because of their strong crypto protection, and there are quite a few countries which are getting nervous with access to Telegram data, because apparently it is well protected, cipher protected. Therefore, they in this case Russia requested from the, paradoxically speaking, from their compatriot who established Telegram, to have a better access to this feature. We have the European Commission has launched a new deal for consumers, including a set of legislative proposals to strengthen consumer rights online. When it comes to jurisdiction legal issues, there is a big move described by some of attempts to reduce its exposure to the EU General Data Protection Regulation. This is very interesting development, because basically by changing one line in the terms of references, Facebook basically moved the 1.5 billion users from the Irish jurisdiction to the US jurisdiction. And we'll discuss it in more details. Therefore now users from who are outside European Union, from Asia, Africa, Latin America, were moved with one click, basically, from the Irish jurisdiction, where was the Facebook international headquarters, to the US jurisdiction. And we'll discuss it in more details later on why it happened. Next, please. We have then on the question of infrastructure, we have more or less the same development. Several countries on the West African coast were affected by a subsea cable cut in Mauritania. The most affected was Mauritania. And the questions of the technical infrastructure are becoming more and more physical infrastructure. Cables, those questions are becoming more prominent in discussions. ICANN is facing a problem with the Gdpr. As you know, the WHOIS database is a part of the ICANN system, and it is not in compliance with the Gdpr. And I think ICANN, we can discuss in more detail what they did, but basically I would say they miscalculated that they can find an ambiguous solution with the European data regulation authorities in order to both keep their WHOIS the system for some level of transparency and protect the privacy of data of people who register their domains. What's happened basically that they got the message from Brussels, said we cannot negotiate on that. It has to be, GDPR has to be implemented as it is written in the rules. Therefore now ICANN is in a very difficult situation. Well, only 1 month before the GDPR is introduced, and they're trying to sort out this situation. On the question of net neutrality, we have the same moves with the states in the US continuing to pass their own net neutrality regulation with Oregon, and in California, strict net neutrality bill is close to become law, despite objection from telecom providers. This is a trend in the US that states are now adopting net neutrality rules. Then we have on new technologies, as you can see, it was quite a busy period on the 25 European countries adopting a declaration on cooperation on artificial intelligence. Then open letter to European Commission related to the question of robots, authorities in California, US, questioning the issue of the autonomous testing of autonomous vehicles. And this is the question of autonomous weapons, which was discussed here in Geneva. UK House of Lords is publishing a report and recommendation on the question of artificial intelligence and society. Microsoft announced plan to invest 5 billion in the research and innovation of Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. Therefore, it is becoming quite dynamic and busy field. Without, we still lack the clear solution, but there is a lot of dynamism. Questions are asked, issues are posed, and that's the main development in this field. Next, please. Which were the main trends during the previous month? Now, as you know, we will try to zoom out, and out of this busy developments, we'll try to identify 3 main trends, which in our view were the underlying during the month of April. Next, please. The first trend is increasing scrutiny for the tech industry, and as you know, the main event was the hearing in Senate and the House of the Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook. This was probably a historical event in many respects. One of the reasons why it was a historical event is that it raised quite a few issues, core issues related to digital policy. It was also, in a way, in vivo exercise which lasted for 10 hours of interplay between policymakers and tech industry with all nuances, psychological, communicational, lack of understanding, lack of the insights. What we are currently doing with our team, and Cedric, our intern, is here, we are analyzing all transcripts and the questions and identifying, for example, if the right questions were asked, because ultimately the hearing was conveyed to see and to ask Mr. Zuckerberg what he did, what his company did, and what representatives of the people in the United States think about the future data regulation. Those are essentially 2 core questions. And it was interesting in our analysis, which we'll publish with the group, to see how the different congressmen and senators ask correct questions, or ask the questions which were not related to discussion, how Mr. Zuckerberg managed to dodge some answers to avoid the direct, and it is really in vivo the best lecture on the digital policy. Here are a few highlights. CEO says regulation is a matter, it's inevitable that there will be regulation. It's not the question if, it is the question how. And he always, it was consistent throughout the hearing that the regulation on data protection will come in some form. Then he, in a way, hinted, and his chief operation officer, Madam Sanders, they hinted to the one issue which we have been discussing in all of our courses, that there is discrepancy and there is a question of the business model of the Facebook, Google, and others. They provide valuable service. Somebody has to pay for this service. Are we going to pay by providing our data, which is the current model, or making it differently and paying certain fees for this type of services? This is going to be ultimately the question that user community, companies, and decision makers have to make, because this service cannot be provided free. The infrastructure provided by Google, Facebook is enormous. They have to hire many people, apparently 20,000 people, according to Zuckerberg, who are dealing only with the content. I mean, 20,000 employees who are dealing only with the content. Therefore, that question will be, in a way, soul searching for the international internet community. Who is going to pay for that and how? But good news is that this discussion is becoming transparent, and then that's sort of good basis for informed decision by us as the users, by governments, by companies and other actors in the field. In his replies, he relied heavily on artificial intelligence. And here is a bit of whatever the questions were about the content policy, he referred to the enormous power of artificial intelligence. At the same time, he said that he recruited 20,000 content analyzers. There is a bit of a paradox here, but that was one of his key answers. In addition, that 43 times he referred the question to his team. That way, he was very well, for those of you who followed, very well prepared to avoid difficult answers, to hint to the possible convergences, to accept the problem, but then to provide possibility for the future developments. Now, what has happened is that, for example, he said that he will extend GDPR rules to all Facebook users. For those of you who are new in this discussion, GDPR refers to General Data Protection Regulation, which will enter into force on 25th of May, imposing very, very high fines for the breach of the data protection regulation, existing more or less regulation in Europe. And it is challenging the business model of the internet companies. It was the major shift when he said, okay, I will apply GDPR, but then he qualified it. He said, I will apply it in the spirit. And then what was surprising developments, he then moved 1.5 billion users from Ireland to the United States. And his explanation, the Facebook explanation, was that they still plan to do it, but they cannot accommodate specific language of the GDPR. That's now really, really open question. Therefore, they have a problem to accommodate specific language of the GDPR, and they don't want to get into the trap. Therefore, they moved 1.5 billion people to the US from Ireland. That's an interesting development. Therefore, his acts are not yet following his words. European Parliament asked basically, okay, we want to have Mr. Zuckerberg in, well, Strasbourg and Brussels, wherever the hearings are happening. And as you know, he refused the invitation to address the UK Parliament. And this is going to be a major problem because there will be many countries asking him to come. And when I was in San Francisco, we had an interesting session on tech diplomacy, but they said, but we'll send equally even better informed representatives. And my point was, it's not a question of sending representatives, it's a question of political signaling. Are you sending to your CEO, like he went to the Congress? Why he wouldn't go to Tuvalu? If Tuvalu has 100 Facebook users, in principle, they have a right to well, he may go for a holiday, it's a nice place, but there is an interesting question, how he will reply to European Parliament invitations, how he will reply for other invitations from other countries. Therefore, this is completely, I would say, historical development. This is the reason why we are putting a lot of efforts to analyze the questions and the answers. And our colleagues, Cedric and his small team will finalize this research soon, and you will have quite an interesting insights in the way how the issues are framed in this discussion. And definitely we'll have more of this in the forthcoming period. Next trend, please. Okay, tech accord was signed, and you know what is the history of tech accord. Microsoft called for adoption of Geneva Digital Convention in 2017. It was one of the major developments, and that proposal consisted of 3 elements. One of the section was a tech accord, where they invited tech companies to agree on the certain principles and rules. Now, since then, at that time, it was the Microsoft proposal. What has happened since then? Microsoft lobbied heavily internet companies to sign this tech accord, and on 17th of April, they basically issued the tech accord. And among signatories, you have quite a few European companies. You have from the US, Cisco, Facebook, I cannot, well, 34 companies, my memory is not that strong anymore. But 2 companies are Facebook, and who are in the tech accord, and Microsoft, obviously. Google, Amazon, Twitter are not part of the tech accord yet. You don't have a Chinese companies, you don't have a Russian company, Indian companies. It's mainly EU, US setting. This tech accord was in a way answer of Microsoft, informal answer to the call for many governments which said, okay, we can discuss the Geneva Digital Convention or any other instruments, but first, guys, you have to have an agreement among yourselves and tell us what you would like, what tech companies can afford and can provide. This is the context. What was interesting, we compared 2 documents, tech accord from the 2017 and the latest version. And there are a few changes. Those changes are, devil is always in detail. There are a few changes. The few changes is a clear indication that companies will fight surveillance. They clearly indicated this, tampering with the exploitation of technology products during its development, design, and distribution. The new element is stronger focus on capacity building, but as you know, capacity building is usually ingredient when you put into any dish where you have a problem to make a nicer taste. Another important point is that major change, all tech accord speaks about critical role of industry. Critical role of industry. In the new tech accord, they say that protection of cyber infrastructure is in everyone's interest. Therefore, it's not anymore critical role of industry. Then the major change that they offered in the first tech accord, that they will focus on issuing patches for their products. You know what is one of the key problems of the modern software industry. In order to be fast on the market, companies release the products with quite a few vulnerabilities. Those vulnerabilities exploited, like WannaCry and other. And now in tech accord they say no, they abandon this language on issuing patches, and they say that they will focus on designing, developing, delivering products that prioritize security. It's security by design, which is one line in tech accord, but with enormous impact on their business model. Therefore, they have to invest more in security before they release the thing. Trust is dropped. Now we are noticing it. You remember trust was all over the place, like blockchain last year. Is dropped from the latest version of tech accord. And no more mentioning of collaboration with governments. That was the focus in the last. In the new tech accord is collaboration with each other, formal and informal partnership, industry, civil society, and security researchers. As you can see, what Microsoft did, now it's a bit of analysis, after strong pushback by internet industry and quite a few governments after they launched the proposal of Digital Geneva Convention. First, they lowered the sort of visibility of that proposal. Brad Smith didn't mention during the Munich conference in February, as we indicated. He had session on security, but he didn't make any single reference to Digital Geneva Convention. And they worked very hard to bring together these 34 companies. Therefore, more sort of bottom-up approach on this development. Therefore, this is the second trend, tech accord, and we can expect more dynamism here. The third trend, please, is busy month for e-commerce. And especially for our colleagues here in Geneva, we can call it soft e-commerce negotiation or discussions and hard e-commerce negotiation, soft and hard politics. Soft was during the UNCTAD e-commerce week, which is another forum where the issues are discussed. And the hard one was basically start of the Plurilateral e-commerce commission and WTO. As you know, in UNCTAD, there is broader discussion on e-commerce. In WTO, you have negotiation of the rules that can be enforced through the WTO enforcement mechanism. Therefore, there are two dynamics, and the spirit of discussion is also different. UNCTAD discussion is more inclusive, more open. WTO discussion is more focused on negotiating, and it brings all complexities that negotiation brings. We'll come later on to that. Now, in the UNCTAD e-commerce week, it was very, very dynamic, very diverse. There were many discussions, and I heard quite a positive comments from my colleagues who reported from the event that real issues were discussed. What I noticed a bit as a missing point is that we discussed a platform, and we had mainly two platforms. We have Alibaba and eBay, but we didn't have a Facebook, we didn't have a Google, and other major platforms in this field. I'm sure that Richard will, he already indicated he would like to comment on the e-commerce week. The second point was the start of the plurilateral negotiation in WTO. And the countries had the first meeting. There were 9 submissions which were made to the WTO. And we'll provide in our newsletter detailed analysis of those submissions. But there are basically 3 zoom out points. The first one is the message, in particular by countries who are keen to have the negotiation on e-commerce, that if WTO does not start the negotiation, WTO will lose the relevance in the digital economy. It's a strong argument. Japan mentioned it. It was mentioned in the US submission, and I cannot quite a few submissions. But this is basically indication, hey, we have to do something. The global economy is changing, and WTO cannot be bystander and say, okay, let's see what will happen. The second point, which was mentioned in the also quite a few submissions, is the question where you do draw the line between trade issues and non-trade issues. For example, it was mentioned in a holistic approach, but not clearly explained in, I think, Costa Rica's Brazilian submission. Russia clearly pointed to make the distinction and analysis what are the core issues, what are non-core issues. And this is interesting that it is one of the rare places where Russia, US are in the same digital policy processes. As you know, UNGG failed, the Commission's, the working group on enhanced cooperation failed. Therefore, it's interesting dynamics in this respect. But this is the second sort of zoom out view where we draw the line between trade issues and non-trade issues. Is cybersecurity trade issue or non-trade issue? And the third point in all of these submissions is the question how you deal with development agenda. As you know, in Buenos Aires, this proposal to create a small group of 70, well, not small, the partial group of 70 countries was against the blockage of the developing countries. Therefore, quite a few submissions made an effort to open the door for other WTO member states to join. With a few hints, Brazil heavily focused on the involvement on development aspect. I think Costa Rica and Brazil, now we'll provide you detailed analysis on this. They argued for a diverse geometry in the negotiation. They said, okay, let us bring everybody, but let the developing countries to choose what they would like to have and what type of regulation they would like to have. It's interesting proposal. And then you have more specific proposal on the authentication and other rules, but those three messages are key. WTO has to do something, some sort of a push for wake-up call because of the relevance. Second, what is the line between digital trade or e-commerce and the other issues? And third, how to bring developing countries who are missing now from plurilateral back around the table. Those are 3 key trends. Now we will get back to the comments from the online community and colleagues here after we finish the next few insights. What is ahead of us in May? Afrinic meeting in Dakar, Transform Africa Summit, Sci-Fi Africa. That's the sort of Indian initiative. Commission on Science and Technology Development in Geneva, Global Commission on the Future of Work, 3rd meeting in Geneva. This is one interesting development which relates to digital. Artificial intelligence for good second global summit in Geneva, also in mid-May. It will be very, very busy. RightCon Toronto, very interesting meeting. For those of you who are not familiar, it's interesting interplay between civil society, businesses, and increasingly governments. I was visiting the US in early April, and quite a few governments will be there. For example, tech ambassadors from Silicon Valley will be going to Toronto for the RightCon. Unfortunately, we cannot be virtual. We'll have 3 interesting meetings, 2 in Geneva and 1 in Toronto between 15th and the 18th of May. Therefore, we'll have to make hard choices. There will be a Commonwealth Cybersecurity Forum in Kuala Lumpur. As you can see, there is a push from Commonwealth to move faster into cybersecurity field. And immediately after the summit in London, you have this meeting. On the Commonwealth, just one reflection, it is interesting because it is the first meeting which was, after a long time, which was held in London. And it is in a way indicating the shift of the UK after Brexit, post-Brexit UK policy, which will focus more on the global partners, and the Commonwealth is an excellent vehicle for the UK. You have South European Internet Governance Forum in Ljubljana, in Slovenia, and then there will be SciCon at the end of May, 10th International Conference on Cyber Conflicts in Tallinn. This is the traditional meeting. Therefore, quite a busy period ahead of us. Next, please. From the Geneva Internet Platform, what we did during the month of April, we launched the introduction to IG course in New York, attended by 30 diplomats from permanent missions in New York. Very interesting course. With another dynamics which is completely different from Geneva dynamics, less informed, more political, as all topics in New York, and we are trying to make this bridge. We launched Tech Diplomacy Report in the Bay Area on the ways how countries interact with the Silicon Valley industry, and participated in UNCTAD e-commerce week with the reporting activities, and we launched Digital Commerce Capacity Development Report during the e-commerce week. What is upcoming? You will get in detail analysis of what we discussed today with our regular newsletter at the end of the month, and we will be participating in May at DiploGip. There will be DiploGip stand and quite a few sessions, and a RightCon in Toronto. We will be obviously reporting from events in Geneva as we are doing regularly. Next. I guess now it's time for questions. Yeah, before we move to the local hubs, we will have a time for questions, and Richard, well, he keeps the tradition. Richard.
Thank you, Jovan. Yeah, Richard Hill here. Now, just on the WTO story, the 71 countries, it's not actually in WTO. And when you make the written version, make sure you make that point, because there was a refusal to allow negotiations in WTO in Buenos Aires. So the existing mandate to have discussions in all of WTO remains, but these people want to negotiate. And so they've created an ad hoc group of 71. Now, they're actually meeting in the WTO premises, and they're using the WTO website, but some people think that that's a mistake because it's not an official WTO activity. So legally, it's not a WTO activity. It's just a group of 71 countries.
Thank you for, well, that's true, yeah. Do we have another mic or not? Okay, please. Any other question, comment here from the room? Oh, please.
Well, Henning Envall from the Swedish mission here. Just to say that I disagree with that. It is a WTO discussion, even though it's taking part between a subset of the WTO members. It's been done in that way many times before, so it's nothing new, really. It's been done many times before, and it's nothing new, really.
This is one of the interesting contested issue, but plurilateral negotiation, there is a tradition, and what I understood from reading and consulting WTO documents, this is one of the constructive ambiguity, which one can use it as it was used in the past for plurilateral negotiations. Do we have any other comment or question here in Geneva, or we move to our online community with Roxana?
Thank you very much. Hello also from our vivid online discussion here. We have 2 questions and 1 comment. I will start with the comment. It relates to the tech accord. While this is a positive development, says Julia, it is yet another example of the many pledges that have been signed by these companies. What we need to see are transparency and accountability mechanisms to fully assess the impact of these pledges. It's a comment. On a related matter, Foncham is asking, is DiploFoundation thinking of any partnership with these 10 companies on security matters and capacity building? And then a question from Suhila on the GDPR. Is it likely to see the GDPR applied to all regions of the world as a means to harmonize personal data protection laws? Thank you.
Okay. The first comment, I agree. The challenge is the transparency, more transparency, and more follow up on the questions, on the statements. And we just heard from Facebook in a way, basically stating that they will follow GDPR and then next day moving their users to other jurisdiction. I think the more transparency is ultimately useful for these companies, and I think they are now, at least based on my experience from our events in San Francisco, they are now more seriously thinking about more transparent and more responsible way of doing, because it will affect their business model in a sustainable way. That leads me to the second question. What I noticed during my recent visit to the United States is that there is a need for capacity building and training. And it is clear that, for example, in the Bay Area, there was a heavy focus on technology, and this is what they should do. They can create a new technology, but nowadays Facebook is not anymore just technological companies with 20,000 employees. I think they are getting close to 50% of employees dealing with policy, with content. And it is clear based on our report and our interviews that we did in the Bay Area that the governments are, based on our experience, were more transparent in saying what they are looking for and how they would like to engage with the tech industry. With tech industry, we had the difficulties identifying who is in charge. Is it the headquarters in Silicon Valley? Is it the office in Brussels? Is it the office in DC? And I think they're in the soul searching how to address these issues. Which is also cultural question, because they were built as a project to solve the problem, whether it is to engage people or to find the search engines. Suddenly they have to act as a structural setup as governments, universities, and other players. Therefore, we would be keen and happy to help, as we did with the Tech Accord, and I'm definitely there is a need to do some capacity building and understanding the way of thinking of both governments and tech companies, understanding the language, understanding what are the bottom lines, what government representatives have to deliver as a public interest. And that's my concern is that potential misunderstanding and confusion can create some sort of suboptimal regulations or decisions on national, regional, and global levels. And we already saw it in the hearing in the US Congress. Lack of the vocabulary to be used by two communities to communicate easily. Therefore, yes, you can count, whoever asked the question, who can count with our modest help that we may provide. Third question about GDPR. Well, Facebook announced that they would like to extend. And some people argued, okay, if Facebook with a major company, internet company, is moving in that direction, we can expect others to follow. But now that there are now more qualifiers in the spirit of the GDPR, inspired by GDPR and the other things. Therefore, it won't be as sort of direct as it was indicated initially by Mark Zuckerberg. Therefore, there will be then the other direction, where other regions and countries may follow what is happening in Europe and basically apply the similar regulation as they did with the right to be forgotten and Uber case and other. There could be this regulatory spillover from Europe to other regions. But then it will be national regulations and national maybe court decisions. Those are three answers to questions from online community. Well, if you don't have any other question or the comment, I hope Steph is better. I can't see her. I would like to thank all of you who joined us online, to thank our colleagues, friends here in Geneva. Spring is coming. We finally have a nice weather, and we are looking for also spring in digital policy. You know, more creative discussions, more convergences, and less conflicts. And as you know, I'm the optimist by nature, and we'll try to highlight the possibilities for convergences that exist definitely, and that we may put additional efforts to explore it. Thank you very much, and have a nice afternoon, morning, and the rest of the day. We switch now online to local hubs and updates from Latin America, Africa, and Asia. All the best, and here we'll have our regular refreshment.
Thank you, Jovan, for the roundup of development in April. Thank you to Roxana for moderating the online conversation and for sharing the questions with our institute audience. For our online participants, we now have regional updates, so please stay tuned. The first update comes from Andre Edwards from the Caribbean region. Andre, over to you.
Andre Edwards with Caribbean Updates. Internet organizations collaborate to boost Caribbean network resilience. A new initiative to make Caribbean internet infrastructure less vulnerable to the impact of climate change and natural disasters is gaining momentum across the region, and significant attention has been paid over the past few months to the issue of strengthening the resilience of Caribbean networks and to the development of greater technical capacity in the region. Recent talks were held in Puerto Rico involving several internet organizations over a more collaborative approach to Caribbean communications network resilience. The Caribbean Telecommunications Union, CTU, also formed the Commission on Caribbean Communications Resilience, CCCR, to identify actionable recommendations for improving Caribbean network resilience. In the lead-up to the 2018 hurricane season, CCCR commissioners met with representatives of the Federal Communications Commission, FCC. The meeting was designed to explore opportunities for engagement and collaboration as the region seeks pathways to increase the resilience of regional communications infrastructure to extreme recurrent natural events. Both organizations shared some of the lessons learned from the historic 2017 Atlantic hurricane season and focused on identifying practical recommendations so that the region's response can be triggered in a more proactive and meaningful way. The Commission is expected to share a draft report soon with recommendations for Caribbean governments, regulators, and communications ministries. Antigua and Barbuda to establish their own cryptocurrency exchange. The government of Antigua and Barbuda has finalized its decision of launching their cryptocurrency exchange. Government officials at St. John's believe that this move will make huge contributions to the nation's treasury and place the country on the forefront of the new system of creating wealth. The local parliament is set to review and adopt the relevant legal framework. Caribbean Terrorism Organization embraces cryptocurrencies. Caribbean governments, along with regional public and private sector organizations, are exploring cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin in large part to address the region's laggard economic growth, high debt levels, and dwindling access to US banks. The Caribbean Tourism Organization is the latest regional institution to embrace cryptocurrency, announcing a pact with blockchain technology company BIT, designed to facilitate the implementation of more efficient payment processes for tourism-related products and services. The groups announced a memorandum of understanding under which BIT's digital wallet and merchant applications will be promoted to help foster broader economic participation in community-based tourism and related sectors. The Caribbean aims to fully examine the advantages offered by new financial technology. In particular, blockchain financial services have the potential to advance objectives of specific programs and activities within the tourism sector.
Thank you very much, Andre. And now we are moving to Middle East and North Africa with Noha Fatih. Go ahead, Noha.
Noha Fatih. I cover internet governance developments in the Middle East and North Africa region. The first update in April is coming from Palestine. The Arab Center for the Advancement of Social Media, Hamla, published its annual report on digital activism. The report unveils the threats to digital space for activism and the target of Palestinians by the authorities for exercising the rights to freedom of expression and freedom of information online. The report shows that the crackdown on digital space in 2017 were done through blocking of websites, the approval of cybercrime law that reportedly clamps down on opposition, and the arrests of citizens for their online activities. With the absence of adequate legal safeguards, the report reinforces the need to develop accountability mechanisms that allow Palestinians to report on such infringements. The second update is coming from Twitter. The newly published transparency report by Twitter revealed that Turkey stands for the vast majority of account removal requests during the period from July to December 2017. During this period, Turkey submitted more than 4,000 requests, which approximately represent 65% of the worldwide requests. Out of the more than 6,000 reported accounts, Twitter removed more than 2,000 accounts for violating its terms of services on the account of covering terrorism, impersonation, and abusive behavior, and withheld content on 3% of these cases. Also, out of the 58 verified journalists and news outlets accounts that were subject to legal demands by Turkey, only one account was withheld due to violating the Turkish anti-terror law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noha. Now we're going to the African continent with Foncham Do. Foncham, please go ahead.
I am Foncham Dennis with Internet Governance Updates for the month of April for the African region. I start in Nigeria, where Vodacom partners with Intelsat to expand broadband connectivity in West Africa. Intelsat confirmed partnership with Vodacom to provide satellite services for the expansion of Vodacom's broadband network in West Africa. According to the agreement, Vodacom will use the services of Intelsat 35E to provide high-quality, fast, and resilient broadband connectivity to the banking, oil, and gas companies in West Africa. Existing customers will enjoy better and new services, and enterprises can expand to any region for better opportunities. Secondly, Google launches an app to boost internet speed in Africa. Google Go is the name of the app to be released by Google to increase internet speed and reduce data costs in Africa. While the app reduces search engine data volume by 40%, previous search results are available offline, and the voice function is made to work better on slow connections. According to Zamo Masito, Google Africa Chief Marketing Officer, this app is a solution to weak internet connectivity, high data cost, and low storage space, which prevents people from exploiting the internet. This app will be available on Google Play Store in 26 African countries. And lastly, in Kenya, IBM researchers and Twiga Food, a food distribution company, are using blockchain technology to enable farmers easily have access to loan. 220 retailers are using this platform. The platform simplifies the challenges faced by small enterprises in Africa to obtain loan due to high cost, collateral requirements, and lack of credit score. Mobile phones are used to calculate credit worthiness by analyzing purchase records. This gives lenders confidence, and the whole process is managed by blockchain technology. The process is transparent, it is free of fraud, and it is fast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Foncham. And now, Claudio Lucena with the updates from the South America. Claudio, please go ahead.
Hello, friends from Diplo. The Cambridge Analytica issue has impacted in the discussion of a controversial bill in Brazil. There is already a legal database in the country of whitelisted consumers who pay their bills on time, and the government is pushing forward changes in this database to make it mandatory rather than optional as it is today, both for natural and legal persons. The supporters argue that the change will help banks reduce risk and interest rates, increase competition, and boost economy. On the other hand, privacy advocates said that the change will excessively expose consumer data and risk discrimination through black box credit scores. After the Cambridge Analytica store became public, these activists have managed to push back some of the key issues of the bill by introducing, for example, a prohibition of the use of data from social networks to compose the credit scores, and an obligation to ask consumers in 30 days whether they wish to remain or not in the database. They still highlight, though, that the opt-out instead of opt-in framework is a major pushback in consent mechanisms that have been recently adopted throughout the world in the direction of consumer protection. The bill might be voted today, April 24, although negotiations haven't been concluded yet and it can still be postponed. A group of civil society organizations have presented a document with transparency recommendations concerning the acquisition and use of surveillance technologies at the end of the 8th Summit of the Americas, which took place in Lima, Peru, from April 13 to 14. The concern stems from the perception of these organizations that corruption cases involving the acquisition and use of surveillance tools have increased significantly in American states. They see this not only as a problem of lack of transparency, but also as misuse of public money to procure tools that will turn back on the public itself, further allowing and promoting serious harm to human rights. Their recommendations including increasing transparency regarding the acquisition and use of surveillance technologies, the development of democratic controls over surveillance activities, a commitment to independent research, and the promotion of a transparent market that fosters human rights.
Thank you, Claudia, and once again, thank you to Andre, Noha, and Fontram. All the developments that Jovan mentioned will be available on our observatory, dig.watch. Also, on the observatory, under dig.watch/newsletter, you can download the latest issue of our newsletter. This brings us to the end of our April briefing, and digest the presentation will be available soon. Thank you once again for attending, and I will see you next month.